So I want to thank everyone for jumping on kind of countrywide. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're currently listening to us from. So my name is Diego Gonzalez. I am the sales manager for the Prairies region here, the corporate team. So I've been with the company now 10 years. I am joined by Dan Rayo, who's our director of product and partner management, who will be just really chatting about our supply chain challenges and mitigation. I know this has been a very relevant topic for a lot of us this year, so I'm happy that everybody could come in and join us and get a bit of our vision and what we're kind of looking to do in the market and what you're seeing, and give you some clarity and hopefully some context to everything that's been happening with everything that you're trying to get done before the end of the year. So I'll turn it over to Dan, and then I'll also, as a housekeeping item, if you have any questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. And if there's any questions in the chat, please feel free to send those along, and we'll answer those as best as we can with the time allotted. And any questions that we don't get to, we'll definitely take those away and have myself or your AM get back to you. So thank you again.
Great. Thanks, Diego. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about a supply chain update. More specifically, we're going to talk today about the challenges that not just Canada, but our entire world is facing, and how CDW can ultimately help you, our customers, through this situation. So as Diego mentioned, my name is Dan Rayo. I'm the Director of Product and Partner Management for CDW's Endpoint portfolio. Endpoint for us is really our PC and peripherals business. For CDW, just to put things in perspective, this is about half of our business, represents well over $500 million in sales in Canada. And to give you some notion of the size of this business, this volume represents something in the neighborhood of 200,000 laptops annually, 100,000 desktops and workstations annually, 250,000 displays, 750,000 accessories, 150,000 printers. So pretty big business. So as you can imagine, supply chain for us is pretty important, and hopefully, you already feel that we do a good job for you. But definitely want to talk to you about the market that we're facing right now. So I'm going to spend the next roughly 15 minutes or so discussing the market situation, and as well as some of the mitigation things that CDW can do to help you. And then, as Diego mentioned, I'll open up for questions at the end. So you're welcome to throw them in the chat or ask them live at the end, whatever works for me. So let's jump into the conversation. If we go to the next slide. Perfect. So what's going on? I've covered lots of headlines on this chart here and really highlighted a handful of keywords, right? Surging demand. The market isn't slowing down. Chip shortages, increasing shipping costs, a container crisis, major real world consequences. On what? Everything. And that quote on the bottom, if you can see it, we're 18 months into the pandemic. And do you know when this quote was from? This all-time high for backlog cargo ships? It was only last month. So while you think that 18 months later, we should be in a much better situation, unfortunately, we're not. So let's talk a little bit about what the situation is that we're all facing. Next slide. So what is impacted? Well, the reality is just about everything is impacted. I'm sure many of you yourselves have tried to buy a car or an Xbox or maybe furniture. Everything, I'm sure you found, is harder to find. And if you find it, there's either no deals on anything or prices are actually higher than they used to be. So at a macro level, what actually happened? Well, what happened was manufacturers reacted to a pandemic back in March of 2020, as you remember, as expected. They stopped making things. Because normally when the world goes into a worldwide situation like a pandemic, people do actually stop buying. But guess what? This time around, everybody started buying more. Demand for almost everything went up. So let's talk about CDW and the demand that we are facing from all of you on this call today. Within my team's portfolio, our PC business makes up approximately 70% of my business. And that business in 2020, so last year, grew by about $8 million year over year. This year, we've already shipped $100 million more in PCs. That's 12x the growth of last year. So that's almost 100,000 more PCs we've already shipped this year. And our business across all of the categories, so if you look across all of CDW, our business is up more than $250 million this year. So while you may all feel shortages and find products take longer to get, the reality is this year we have shipped significantly more than last year. So the only reason that shortages exist is due to this huge demand and, unfortunately, that supply chain that just cannot keep up with that huge volume increase. So let me talk a little bit about that. Our world's consumption of computer chips has been constantly increasing, right? As you know now, everything is either smart, everything uses some kind of technology in it. So chips are in high demand across every segment of the marketplace, regardless of what the product is. The trigger of the shortages, yes, was in fact the pandemic. That everything is, we're talking about today is really pandemic induced. Lockdowns immediately shut down some of those semiconductor chip making factories in places like Japan, China, Korea, and even the US. And then unfortunately, the ability to ramp back up and then catch up has just been way too high for the system to consume. And as you can imagine, these factories, these manufacturing facilities take billions or cost billions of dollars to put together and takes years for them to come online. So it's unfortunately a situation where you can't just quickly add lots more capacity. You have to live with the capacity that you had originally before the pandemic. Now, some of our great partners like Apple or NetApp or Pure Storage actually do make their own chips. So they are definitely less at the mercy of component manufacturers. But many, as a reality, many of the PC makers for sure depend on chips from like AMD and Intel, et cetera. One interesting market dynamic that we are seeing is actually a shift of the kinds of products that people are buying. I'm sure many of you can look at your, internal consumption of technology, and it might be a little bit different than it was pre-pandemic. We're definitely seeing that higher end models, higher spec, especially of PCs, that most of which are going to, situations of work from home for your coworkers. That means that lower end models are in harder supply, right? Because you can understand that from a manufacturer perspective, if they have one chip and they can choose to build a laptop, they're most likely going to buy a higher end model, higher spec model. And guess what? That's exactly what you want. So there's definitely some shortages on some lower end models, as well as on some of the higher end models, because everyone is buying them right now. There's also uncertainty in supply because OEMs may focus their components on one product one week and one product the next week, right? Because they're trying to catch up across all the different devices that they manufacture. So what it means, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this, you might buy a product and it might come in next week. And then a week later, you'll buy exactly the same product and all of a sudden it's 2 months out. And that's just a reality of the manufacturing cycles that our manufacturer partners are having to go through to be able to address all the different demands that they have. So even when goods can be manufactured, it's hard to ship them to their destination, right? So logistics companies themselves were impacted, right? The reality is when you're out there physically shipping goods from one place to another, an awful lot of that job cannot be done work from home. These are actually people that need to be out there moving cargo off ships, moving cargo onto trucks, et cetera. And so obviously they were impacted by some of the shutdowns that happened from a pandemic perspective. And so they too, these shipping companies are all struggling to catch up and deal with the high demands that are being put on them right now. So let's talk a little bit about some of the shipping stats. If you weren't aware, large container ships and other ocean-going vessels are the primary way that people move goods internationally across a lot of different products, most products. In fact, 90% of what we typically buy arrives by ship in some way, shape, or form. During the first lockdown, the capacities in both manufacturing and those shipping capacities both dropped, right? But as I mentioned, then the market realized demand didn't drop. So those factories ramped back up and crammed the shipping systems, which scrambled to then ramp back up again. With lower demand in previous years, those shipping companies really haven't been adding or upgrading their fleet. And again, so the reality is a ship takes many years and many millions, if not billions of dollars, depending on the size of the cargo ship to build. There's going to be no more ships in the short term. So we are stuck with the capacity that we had and being able to just get it back to the maximum that it can deliver on. Then we had some disasters, right? You can call this global warming. There's definitely lots of theories around why things like storms became more prevalent, but it definitely impacted the supply chain. In fact, and the rumor is that HP had thousands of laptops in containers that fell off a ship in the ocean, right? So as soon as you have that situation, you're also impacted by these natural disasters. I'm sure all of you followed the news on the ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, right? Massive volumes on these ships. And that one ship, while it was only one ship, you saw the backlog at ships that it then caused as these ships were trying to get through the Suez Canal. So even things that might seem trivial, like a single ship, stuck in the Suez Canal, has massive impacts, and it can ultimately take even years to catch back up again. Let's talk about cost a little bit of shipping. before 2020, transporting a standard, you've seen those big steel containers, a standard 40-foot container on a ship sailing from a Chinese port to North America cost about $1,000. Currently, it's upwards of $10,000. So that's just how significant shipping costs have risen as well. You're seeing some really interesting things going on in the marketplace today. Major retailers like Home Depot and Costco have actually started to charter their own container ships. They're not even, working with shipping companies. They're trying to do their own thing. And, containers are the most typical way that products are shipped around the world. But Coca-Cola actually did something a little bit different. And they actually recently moved a 60K ton shipment of sacks with some ingredients from their products in bulk carriers instead of containers. So every company is out there looking for ways that they can do better in the world that is, challenged from a supply and shipping constraint as well, too. And then unfortunately, the pandemic is not over. So quarantining, outbreaks, social distancing, all of those things continue to lead to just ultimately lower available capacity. And so we're still catching up with this backlog. We're not having full capacity. And so that's why we're in the situation today. Paired up against with that massive demand that we're already seeing, right? So considering that, we're still doing pretty well, but definitely there are shortages. And ultimately, you may say, we're 18 months in. Why are we not under control just yet? Well, the reality is it's all about volume, right? This is the world's shipping challenges, manufacturing challenges, the demand that we're seeing, constant balancing across all of those industries. Chips might, factory might get produced for cars one week and PCs the next week. So there's really no such thing as predictable supply. So we're all dealing with what is very unpredictable realities of the products that we're trying to consume and not knowing when they're exactly going to come in. So ultimately, yes, things are getting better. And I'm sure you've seen glimpses of things getting better, whether it's personal purchases that you're making or the technology that you're buying from CDW. But the reality is that some reports are actually saying it will still be years before things are back to, quote, normal again, whatever that may be in the future. So the reality of the situation that we all face today and what we're trying to help you kind of work through is that it's highly fluid and constantly changing. And so updates like this, hopefully you'll find value in it. You definitely engage with your account manager, and there are updates, constantly provided to that team, who I'm sure you talk to almost on a daily basis, and they can continue to give you updates. So just to put things, straightforward, how does this materialize for all of you? These are really the four things that ultimately I'm sure you're all feeling. Number one, longer lead times, right? It just takes longer to get products than it's ever before. Number two, inconsistent ETAs. As I said, you might order something, it might come in quick. You might order something, it might take a long time to come in. And that's just the unfortunate situation that we face. Lacking inventory, right? Normally, we would have in Canada thousands of laptops, tens of hundreds of thousands of laptops in stock, ready to ship. Those inventories are significantly lower than they've ever been based on the situation, both the lack of supply as well as high demand. And then the last point, let me just explain a little bit, for those of you that, remember Economics 101, the reality is when you have a supply demand situation like we're facing today, the reality is that prices tend to increase as well too, right? So there's price increases coming because of just costs, but there's also price increases, or usually they materialize as lack of discounts that manufacturers are willing to offer on products based on the fact that they only have a limited supply. And so therefore they maximize the dollars on them. So that's something that we're working with all of you on for whatever your technology needs are today. We go on to the next slide, please. So how can CDW Canada help? There's lots of things that hopefully many of you are familiar with. CDW Canada is a very large, stable, and market dominant player in Canada. 900 plus coworkers, 18-year history in Canada alone, lots of skilled technical coworkers, lots of great services capabilities. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about partner and distributor relationships and why that matters. And then I am going to spend a few minutes talking about some of our procurement programs, some of which you might be able to leverage to better smooth out the demand that you have for certain technologies. So as I mentioned, we have a lot to offer customers, but from a services perspective, we do have an incredible team of service professionals as well as services partners and a wide assortment of services as well too. On the endpoint portfolio, specifically what my team works with, we have a great amount of different things that can actually help you consume that technology. Things like imaging to put your custom images on your devices, Autopilot, which is Microsoft's new way of deploying PCs, asset tagging, configuration capabilities. We can do digital signage deployments. We offer managed print solutions and can offer any sort of custom and professional services as well too. As I said on the last couple of things on this list, I'm going to jump into in the next few slides, really things that we think can benefit you as you work together through these supply chain challenges. So next slide, please. So from a distributor and partner relationships, I mean, one of the things that CDW's large size and scale is that we do have pretty strong relationships with our manufacturer partners. When I say manufacturer partners, I mean the likes of the HPs and Lenovo's and the Cisco's, et cetera, within the marketplace, but also for our distribution partners as well, too. For most of our manufacturer partners in Canada, CDW is their number one seller, essentially, of their technology. And for our distributor partners in Canada, CDW is their number one customer. The reality of this, it means that we are well engaged with all of these partners. And through those connections and engagement, we're able to escalate your needs and get more than our fair share of product available for all of you, right? Again, it just comes with scale, our ability to look for favors on your behalf to get the products that you're looking for. So hopefully you've all experienced CDW's better availability to get product for you. Moving on to the next slide. I want to talk about some of the resources that we have available to you. So this group on this slide here is actually my team. This is our team of endpoint-focused pre-sales specialists. They are all subject matter experts for the brands that are listed here, but it's just my team. We have another team just as large focused on the data center partners, as well as we have a large team of solution architects with expertise across lots of different disciplines like security, networking, storage, etc. So why is this beneficial? Well, to start with, they are the experts who can understand your business and make solution recommendations. But more importantly, on today's topic of shortages, they can also make recommendations on products and solution alternatives that are much more available in the market. They have really close alignment to our product management team, to our vendor and distributor partners, and they can align available solutions to your needs. So sometimes the situation may be that the exact solution that you want may not be available, but we can come up with other solutions that will maybe fit the bill most of what you need, but could be available now. And again, ultimately work with you on what the best solution is. So please do not hesitate to leverage this large team of pre-sales experts to help you find solutions to your business problems that are more available in today's constrained marketplace. And just so you know, this team also proactively digs into all of the back orders that we have within our system that all of you have placed on CDW for their assigned partners. And they actually will bring forward to your account managers proactive alternatives. So you may have a product on order, it may be delayed, they will reach out and say, hey, what about this alternative? So please don't ever hesitate that if you do need something a little bit quicker, to engage your account manager, to then engage a specialist within our team, to then help you find something that might be more available that would fit what your needs are. Move on to the next slide, please. So on this next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the procurement programs that CDW offers. So these are ultimately programs that can help reduce the risk of getting the products you need when you need them. So the first one on this list is pretty simple, inventory holds. So by this, we mean that CDW periodically reviews the most popular products that your customers buy from CDW, the market availability situation on those products, and may actually commit to amounts of inventory. So it's ultimately reserved for CDW customers. This ensures that CDW customers have a good availability of the most popular products. Often the relationships we have with our distributors means that CDW gets priority access anyways, so inventory holds are not always necessary, but it's definitely something that we have leveraged many times over the couple of years of the pandemic. The second program on the slide is pre-order. So this is a program where CDW will actually pre-order products for your specific needs before you actually place a purchase order with us. As this does present risk for CDW, there are obviously various factors and criteria that come into play. So please simply just engage with your account manager if there are situations where you need us to pre-order something so they can work with our procurement team to see if we can make this happen for you. Next slide, please. So the next set of procurement programs are what we call staging programs. So the first of these is something called hold and bill. In this program, you, our customer, would enter into agreement with CDW where you commit to buying the products. CDW then secures the products, we hold on to them, and sell and ship them to you when you actually need them. Now, there are two variations here, one being you tell us exactly the number you need, and then what we secure on your behalf. The second is called min-max, where ultimately we ensure that we always have a certain level of products on hand, and then we automatically reorder as you consume that inventory. So an example of that is where you have constantly new employees joining the organization, and you always need to make sure that we have at least, a handful of laptops or something like that waiting. We can absolutely have that. Once it gets to below a minimum, we'll just reorder them automatically so that you always have a certain minimum level at CDW. In both of these hold and bill situations, the price does fluctuate based on the current purchase price at the time. So that is one of those situations where, again, price comes into play now. And if I move in a second program, you'll see it is a little bit different there. The second program is called buy and hold. So it's slightly different in that you actually would buy these products. And then CDW still holds on to them and then ships them as you need it. Now, in this case, you've secured the price at the time you actually purchased them, right? So in this case, there are no price fluctuations. You've already procured it at the price. And with prices going up, probably advantageous to do that because ultimately we're not seeing prices going down right now. We're seeing prices going up. So we've definitely seen over the last 18 months an uptick in the usage of all of these procurement and staging programs. So please do engage with your account manager to see whether any of these programs would actually fit your needs. Next slide, please. So before I close and we open for questions, I did have a summary a little bit about our Canadian organization. As I said, we are part of a worldwide organization. We've made a good number of recent acquisitions, including most recently Sirius Computer Solutions. From a CDW Canada perspective, we are now fully integrated from the acquisition we made of Scalar Decisions a few years ago. And the combined CDW and Scalar organization brings significant solutions and services capabilities to the Canadian market and to all of you, with offices and coworkers right across Canada. Now let's move on to the last slide. So in closing, the reality, unfortunately, is that the marketplace we face today is what it is. And these supply chain challenges that are impacting our business today will not be solved this year. Obviously, there's only a couple of weeks left in this year, but they're definitely not going to be solved this year. And in fact, based on information that our partners are sharing with us, and we're constantly talking to all the various OEMs about what they're seeing for the future, the reality is it's probably not going to be solved, at least for the first half of 2022 at this point in time. It remains to be seen whether we still have challenges towards the tail end of 2022 at this point in time. That said, though, we're definitely seeing things get better. We're definitely seeing more available inventory. Everybody over the last 18 months, from a manufacturing to a shipping, have all been working to take advantage of the demand in the marketplace and ramp up their production, ramp up their shipping capabilities. But the looming impact of the COVID Omicron variant is still unknown. That could be a potential impact. We just don't know just yet. A lot of crystal ball gazing going on right now. And I'll just leave it with, the fact that I shared that CDW does have better capability to help you navigate these supply chain challenges, but we still ask you to work with your account manager or account executive, right? Your sales contact at CDW, whoever that may be, can provide you regular updates on the supply picture for the products you purchase for CDW, right? They're in constant discussion with my team and the rest of the product management team as well, too, to understand what's going on product by product. And if you don't have a regular QBR, or a quarterly business review, in place with your CW salesperson, ask them about setting one up. Ultimately, it just gives you a better connection into the sales organization, which ultimately, knows exactly what's going on from a CDW supply perspective as well, too, from our procurement engine, as well as from my team on the product and partner management side. And then when you do think about those IT needs, we have to recommend that you really forecast out for at least a rolling 6 months in a perfect world, right? And then get those orders in well ahead of time before you need those products. That just gives us the ability to work with our distributors, to work with our manufacturers and our procurement team to get you the needed supply when you actually need it. And then, as I mentioned, if any of those procurement or staging programs could actually benefit your procurement needs and the way you operationalize buying technology, please do engage your account manager and they'd be happy to kind of take you through that. So I just want to say thank you very much for your time. And with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. A lot of information, and I'm sure everybody, got a lot of great takeaways. I know I've listened to this presentation a few times, and every time I figure out something new that I find very useful. But again, I think the other portion of all this information is the transparency that we're looking for from every one of you on this call when we're having these conversations, either through quarterly briefings or you're discussing with your account manager or your account executive, just giving them that level of forecasting and transparency into what your business looks like today, and how we can really help is both being as transparent as possible with what the situation is and how we can kind of accommodate to make those changes using our engine to help yours. So that's why I thought this session was super relevant at the end of the year, just to give everybody some great context into what's happening in the market. Is it going away right now? Probably not. But what can we do to help you going into 2022, and how can we have those conversations, proactively, so that we can be that engine that you're looking for to help you through this kind of, uncertain time that everybody's going through. So I really want to thank everybody for jumping on the call. And then definitely, if anybody has any questions for Dan or myself, by all means, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead. I also know, Dan, that we had a couple that were emailed prior, and I can get those answers, shoot those out to you if you want.
Hey guys, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I just
Sure.
wanted to thank CDW. We had a case that just fell into it very well, where we had a supply of laptops that we were trying to get for our business, both Canada and the US, and we couldn't get them from our base supplier through Dell because of the supply chain issues. And you guys were able to help us out for hundreds of devices for our year-end requirements. And I just wanted to recognize you guys for the success that our business saw and appreciated with that support. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for the feedback. We love to hear that, and I'm glad we were able to get you what you needed. So thank you for the feedback.
We're glad to.
That's great. I see a question on the chat, Diego.
Yeah.
So the question
I'll
was, so I'll just jump into
Right.
this one. Is this why Lenovo or other manufacturers not showing what is coming to EOL and coming out? Yeah, I mean, definitely there is a situation with all the manufacturers where they, over the last 18 months, have just, had to make some decisions as to whether or not they actually launch products and face, those new products not being available, and then decide whether or not they're going to communicate the sunsetting of a product. And unfortunately, what we've seen across different manufacturers is different approaches, right? I think each one of them has a different strategy. Some of them are forging ahead, releasing new products. What that has meant for certain OEMs is that the old products, they stopped focusing all their manufacturing efforts on. The new products that they did. So unfortunately, with the demand that we saw a gap. So you had situations where certain manufacturers were completely out of a certain product because they'd already announced a new one. They didn't want to build any of the old ones, and the new ones are just not available just yet. And so we've had gaps. So it's not the ideal scenario. So it is something that they're constantly juggling. So I think the reality is, bring forward any of those questions. We definitely have our product management team has line of sight and engagements with our partners. So if you have any specific questions about a particular model that you're buying and whether or not it's going end of life or what the situation is, please bring it forward to your account manager. Your account manager can engage with my team, and we can engage with the manufacturer and get the real answer about what's going on. Awfully, usually, even if it's just in an NDA type scenario, we'll be able to understand exactly what's going on, hopefully provide you some guidance as to what the right approach is. Because that's ultimately what we want for you, right? Is to be able to provide that guidance that says this particular product probably is not going to come in, so don't even bother back ordering it. Let's look at what the new products are. We'll understand the timeline and help you get the new product in order that has a better chance of coming in. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks for the question, Lexi. Dan, did you want me to go ahead and read the two questions that we had kind of prior to?
Why don't you start with one of those questions, and then we'll see if it prompts anyone else for any other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, I'd like and need to have in-stock and warehouse availability working and accurate. Can you ensure this is something your team is working on? So this, I'm assuming it's regarding our website.
Yes. Yeah, no, and it's a great question. The reality is, if you're not familiar, CDW actually has a pretty well integrated system with our distribution partners, where we actually get a real-time inventory feed that updates every 15 minutes across all of the warehouses, across all the distributors we work with, that then feeds into our system. Yes, unfortunately, a little while ago, there was a glitch that was unfortunately not showing accurate inventory reports. I brought that up to the team. They already knew about it. They were working on fixing it. It should be accurate now. So please, again, bring forward if you feel that there is something that is not accurate. Now, that said, though, the one challenge that we do face about accuracy is that this is an update every 15 minutes. right? So again, with the demand that we're seeing today, with the volumes that we're shipping right now, the reality is the products may be consumed while that 15-minute window is open. And we've definitely had situations where there might be, 3 or 5 or 10 of a particular product. It shows that on the website. You go to procure it, and by the time our order gets in, the product has already been consumed by somebody else. And that's just unfortunate, the volume situation that we're facing today. So, as I said, we are 15 minutes delayed from an inventory perspective, so there's always that risk. But there was I'll acknowledge that there was a problem on the web and the accuracy of it, but my understanding is it's all been fixed now. So please bring forward any specific examples and we'll dig into them. But thank you for that question.
Perfect. We also have one on the chat from Richard. So Microsoft hardware doesn't seem to be impacted to the same level as others. Any thoughts on why?
So that's an interesting observation. Because I would say from my lens, and my team works with, the big 5 OEMs. So my biggest partners are Microsoft Surface, Dell, HP, Lenovo, and Apple. And, Microsoft hardware, when we talk about partners that decided to go through a refresh, they're actually one of those partners that decided to go through a refresh, right? So if you're looking for a laptop 4, Surface Pro 8s, the new Surface Studio, pretty slick machine, like those are machines that were announced, in November. And some of those products are either in very, very short supply or not available until January at this point in time. So I would actually say that there are impacts on the Microsoft side. Now, that said, though, Microsoft does have lots of Surface Go products, which is their lower end machines. So there's a ton of availability of those type of machines. It's not necessarily what we're seeing demand for right now. People are tending to buy higher spec machines and some of the more robust machines. So there is definitely lots of Go product, but it's just the only reason there's lots of them is because that's not what's being consumed right now. But definitely, yeah, it's an interesting kind of observation from my lens. Each one of them over the months has had their moments where they've had lots of good availability, and then they've had the valleys as well too, where they've had no availability. And it's a cyclical type of scenario where, depending on the month and quarter, certain manufacturers seem to be doing better than others, and then it changes the next quarter. And that's part of the volatility that we're facing today over time. So it may be at a particular point in time, one manufacturer does look better than another one. Well, great question. Great observation.
Thanks, Richard. And then I'll get to the second question that we had kind of prior to the event. So when will Lenovo's supply chain be restored to normal product order delivery expectancy?
Yeah, and it's, again, a great question. And I think that's the million-dollar question that everybody is looking for. We too are looking for that. All of us are looking for that as well too, not just on Lenovo, but on all the manufacturers. Right now, to be honest, they do not know. And that's straight up the answer. They just do not know yet because there's a situation that comes to chip manufacturing, right? The component level, then their own manufacturing, and then the ability to ship it to Canada, and then the demand that we're seeing today. Any one of those individual pieces changing could change the supply profile, right? So for example, in January, if laptops are not as in demand as they were this month, we may actually see more available supply. It won't be because there's more available supply. It'll be because there's less demand for those products. There's lots of work being done to ramp up production. But right now, unfortunately, nobody's willing to commit to a date when things will be, quote, done in terms of this, impact on the supply chain. Definitely, all of them are feeling much more optimistic as we come into the year and go into the beginning of next year about their ability to keep up supply with the demand that we're seeing right now. But as I said, things could change with Omicron, right? Things could change with demand and things could change with, the supply of the chips, the manufacturing capacity, the shipping capacity. So unfortunately, there's just way too many variables right now for anyone to have any sort of a definitive date. So nobody will commit to a date at this point in time. So keep checking back with us, keep engaging with your account manager, and we'll provide updates as we get updates from our manufacturer partners. Great question.
Thanks, Dan. We'll leave it open for another couple of minutes if anybody does have any questions. But again, a big thank you to Dan, a big thank you to Cassandra on the marketing side for helping us put this event together kind of with not as much time as we normally like to get as a runtime, but that all said, I really want to thank everybody as well for jumping and really having some time to sit down with us and get our view on the landscape of what we're seeing today and how we can kind of all move forward to best work together.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. And with that, I think we can close. You always have the welcome to go back to your account manager. I'm more than happy to answer anything. If you want to, leverage any questions if you have in the future to your account manager, they can work to get them through to me, and I'd be more than happy to get you answers. So thank you, everybody. With that, have a great rest of your afternoon.